Falava, and thank you so much for having me this morning.
How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah. Last time we had you on our program, you were just about to jump on a plane. It's a cross-party dedications to the Pacific. What were the key takeaways from the dedications visit to Tonga, Hawaii, and Vanuatu?
It is really important, particularly for any government, that we have really good working relationships with our Pacific countries. And one of the things that this Deputy Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of Foreign Affairs, has committed to is actually not just having conversations, say, via the phone or via Zoom, but actually physically visiting the Pacific countries. And initially, when these trips happened, Pacific MPs were not invited, but towards the end of last year and, through this year, he has invited not just me, but also our deputy leader went on this trip as well, the Honourable Carmel Sepuloni, and Taeao Tuyono from the Green Party. And as you say, it's a cross-party trip. And the really important thing that he wants to do is actually to have those direct conversations and to strengthen the relationship that we have as New Zealand with our Pacific brothers and sisters, many of them. So the first visit was to Tonga, and we sat around the table with the cabinet. We were able to have free and frank discussions. It wasn't just our ministers that went with us and the cross-party MPs, but it was also the cabinet from Tonga, and it was the same thing in all the other countries that we visited, and really good discussions. We covered various things, including, the aid that New Zealand gives to the Pacific. One of the things that the Right Honourable Winston Peters did when he was Deputy Prime Minister, when we were last in government, the Labour government, is he did what was called the Pacific Reset, which ensured that the investment that New Zealand government has in terms of overseas aid, 70% of that was to go to the Pacific. And so there were various discussions about that as well. So really fruitful conversations to have. And at every country, he actually made the point that one of the reasons why he invites politicians from all the parties is because governments come and go, but in terms of our working relationship with the Pacific, it's always in our advantage, I suppose, if you can call it that, to ensure that regardless of which government is in here in New Zealand, that things that are agreed with the Pacific carries on, that we don't politicise it. And I've got to say, this is actually one area that we don't usually politicise. We usually agree on the Pacific as well as trade.
Okay. Jenny Salesa, were there any commitments or agreements made during the visit that will directly impact Pacific communities?
I think the main thing that impacts Pacific is actually, as I said earlier on, the aid that New Zealand invests in the Pacific. And so there were various conversations around that, but as you know, this was right before the budget, a week and a half ago. Actually, just last week, the government of New Zealand announced its budget. And so even though there were various questions that were asked from the Pacific around, can you invest more in scholarships? Can you invest more in the Pacific? Can you invest more in this particular country? The Deputy Prime Minister, who's also Minister of Foreign Affairs, could not actually commit to those things, not then, because the budget had not been announced.
Okay, as a spokesperson for the ethnic communities, what does the Labour Party plan to strengthen diplomatic and economic ties with Pacific nations?
With Pacific nations or with the ethnic community?
The ethnic communities, rather.
So one of the things that this current government is doing in terms of trade is it's trying to finalise a free trade agreement with India, which is something that we totally hope that they are able to achieve. Our largest trading partner in Aotearoa, New Zealand right now is China. The trade value to New Zealand is just over $18 billion a year. But I want to reflect that it was actually under Labour, under, Phil Goff, the Honourable Phil Goff. He's the one that over many years negotiated that free trade agreement signed it in 2008, and then unfortunately, of course, Labour lost that election, and then John Key and his government came in and implemented the free trade agreement that Labour had negotiated and finalised. It is our hope that in terms of India, it is the largest country in the world in terms of population, that this government is successful in negotiating and finalising a free trade agreement with China. As I said, trade is also an area where we don't usually politicise. We agree that it is in the best interests of our country that free trade agreements are signed. And so we hope that this government is successful, and we, the last time that the Right Honourable Christopher Luxon took the largest ever number of people to India, which was a few months ago, one of our MPs, our Labour MPs, the Honourable Priyanka Radhakrishnan, who is herself Indian, went on that trip. And so it is our hope, as I say, that we finalise that free trade agreement. In terms of the numbers of ethnic community people in New Zealand, there are just over 300,000 who are Indian. The total number of ethnic communities is just over 1 million. So 300,000 Indians, just over 282,000 Chinese, and 108,000 Filipinos. Those are the three main ethnic communities in New Zealand right now. And so in terms of strengthening the relationship with those three countries in particular, we try to do it, myself as ethnic community spokesperson, with those communities here in Aotearoa, but at the same time, it is also one of the things that we're focused on, ensuring that our relationship with those countries are also strengthened.
Okay, Jenny Salesa, what are the biggest challenges facing ethnic communities in New Zealand today? Do you know?
It's actually very similar to the challenges that the majority of us face. In terms of the folks that come through to my electorate office, which is based in Ōtara, I have many thousands actually who are Indians, Filipinos, and from all over the world in terms of ethnic communities. It is cost of living. Many of them are asking for assistance with cost of living. It's also immigration. One of the things that this national government promised during the campaign is the parent visa category, where they would ensure that people who are citizens in New Zealand and permanent residents in New Zealand would be able to bring their parents on a multiple 10-year visa, and those parents can come and go from the country. But we haven't actually seen that visa come through. And so we're seeing quite a lot of people coming through with issues like that, immigration issues. But in terms of assistance as well, a lot of them are saying that they want to feel safer in their communities. There are a lot of small businesses, as you know, that are run by ethnic communities, many of them Indians and Chinese, and quite a lot of them are still coming through saying that they still don't feel as safe. They're still having ram raids and people threatening them. And so there are some law and order and safety issues that they are still very concerned about.
Excellent. Whawhitai Te Lava. Thank you so much, Jenny Salesa, for sharing that for our listeners this morning. Is there anything else you want to talk about? We're running out of time, but I'll just leave it up to you.
Really just the fact that we're really quite disappointed with this current government in terms of balancing their budget, taking that money mainly from pay equity. We know from the budget that was revealed last week that 12.8 billion of the money comes through from pay equity settlements that we had put aside for pay equity, and a lot of this actually affects our women, our Pacific women. And so that is actually a huge disappointment for us, that in the future, these pay settlements, it's going to be so much harder for women to go through, if you're a nurse, if you're a teacher, if you're an aged care worker, if you're a cleaner, to actually make your case that you deserve to be paid equal pay for the work that you do. And so that is a huge disappointment for us, because this government has just cut so many things. If you were to look, say, at the Ministry of Pacific Peoples, right, at the budget this year, the cut was about 36 million. But then when you add the cuts that was made last year, that was 26 million. That's a whole lot of cuts. And yes, we see that this government is investing in Pacific Wardens, $250,000 a year in Pacific Wardens, and they do a really good job. But when you look at the overall cuts, not just to Ministry of Pacific Peoples, but the cuts in education, the cuts in health, and these cuts in terms of women's pay, it is really shameful, I think, that they are not really looking after Pacific people. The other shameful cut that they made in this budget is the money that had been put aside under Labour after we made the apology for the Dawn raids. We put some funding aside, and now that money has also been cut, and we think that's really just shameful because, as you remember, Dawn raids happened under Muldoon, which was a national-led government, and this was actually funding that was put aside to assist with that trauma that many of our people, Samoans, Tongans, Pacific, went through, and that even that money has been cut. And so we're really quite sad for our Pacific people. And to us, this budget basically just says that this national-led government does not care enough for Pacific people.
Right. Honourable Jenny Salesa, once again, thank you so much for your time.
Manuia lava. Thank you.
Honourable Jenny Salesa, Mole Talanoanga, Nefo Taeao, Folded to tomorrow, the Samoa Svalima, Eva Tolu Amo.